A very good morning to one and all. Today we are going to continue with the topic head injury. Today we are discussing about the nursing management. Okay, what are the nursing management for head injury? So nursing management, first of all, assessment, obtain a health history. We have to collect the health history, including time of injury, cause of injury, direction and force of the blow, loss of consciousness, and condition following injury. So we have to collect a detailed health history about the patient, whether what time injury happened, what is the cause of the injury, whether it's a MLC medical legal case or non-medical legal case, and what kind of a force blowing, then whether the patient gone for loss of consciousness or what are the conditions after the injury. Then detailed neurologic information we have to collect: level of consciousness, ability to respond to verbal commands if patient is conscious, whether the patient is able to respond to you if you are asking the name or if you are talking something, if they are responding or not. Respond to tactile stimulation. So when you are touching or when you are doing some stimuli, whether the patient is responding. Then if the patient is unconscious, pupillary response to light is there. Then corneal and gag reflexes, motor function, and system assessment provide baseline data. Okay, so these are reflexes also we have to baseline assessment we have to done. Then next one is Glasgow Coma Scale. Okay, Glasgow Coma Scale I will take a detailed class afterwards. So it is a scale we are using mainly, okay, for the assessment of level of consciousness. Okay, in that mainly three criteria is there: eye opening, verbal response, and motor response. Okay, we just go through the test book. You can see the Glasgow Coma Scale. I will give you the explanation later. So in the Glasgow Coma Scale, it's a assessment scale which we are using to measure the level of consciousness, whether the person how much consciousness is there. In that eye opening response, we will assess verbal response, whether the person is communicating or responding to sounds. Then motor responses, mainly reflections. Okay, so reflexes we will whether the person is responding, either they are having some action or verbal commands during painful stimulation. Okay, then GCS score are 8 or less is generally accepted as indicating a severe head injury. If we are getting this GCS score total, it is 15 score. So out of 15, if it is 8 score, if the patient is coming 8 score, then we are only 8 score means we are assessing or we are indicating it as a severe head injury. Inspect the patient's scalp. Then we have to inspect the patient's scalp properly, whether any laceration, hemorrhage, contusion, abrasion, concussion, compressions. Then palpate the patient head to detect or assess fractures, hematomas, and ecchymosis. Okay, any blood clot is there, that all things we have to inspect. Then inspect ear and nose. Okay, we have seen that in the types and all, we have seen that there is a chance of CSF leakage through the ear or nose. So we have to assess that on whether any active hemorrhage is there. Then body parts, we have to assess any bony fracture, laceration, dislocation, hemorrhage, and abrasion. So this all assessment we have to inspection we have to do. Then avoid flexion and hyperextension, rotation of the neck. Okay, when you are doing the assessment, we have to avoid, you should avoid flexion. Don't flex the head or don't extend the head or don't rotate the neck, because before proper diagnosing, if we are doing all this assessment, it can lead to further injury or more injury can occur. Then we have to apply a cervical collar, then placing sandbag on either side of the head to immobilize the head. Then use of spine board to immobilize the cervical spine. Then monitoring vital signs. We have to take the vital signs properly, it including we have to assess the intracranial pressure. Then pulse we have to assess. Then systolic pressure we have to assess. Then body temperature we should assess. Then you have to assess the heart rate. Okay, this all are the basic vital signs we have to assess. Then assessing motor function, here observe spontaneous movement, ask patient to raise and lower extremities. We have to we have to communicate with the patient. We have to tell them to raise the lower extremities. We have to assess whether they are responding or not. Then compare strength of hand grasp and periodic intervals. Tell them to hold their hands. You have to check whether the hand they're able to hold the hand properly. Not presence or absence of spontaneous movement of each extremity. Assess responses to painful stimuli in absence of spontaneous movement. Determine patient's ability to speak, not quality of speak. Okay, so motor function completely we have to assess. In that you have to check whether the proper movement of extremity is there, whether the patient able to hold tightly, is there any weakness in the extremities, then whether they can able to speak, or you have to check the quality of speak whether it is clear or not. Then evaluating eye signs, evaluate spontaneous eye opening, evaluate size of pupils and reaction to light, whether the pupils are, when you are flashing the light over the patient's pupil, whether it is reacting constricting or not. Then check for any hematoma, active hematoma. Then both pupils are fixed and dilated, it usually indicate overwhelming injury and poor prognosis. If we are seeing that, if the pupils are fixed and dilated, that means there is poor prognosis, very patient is having severe head injury. Then evaluating eye signs, evaluating spontaneous eye opening, that we already seen. Then assess cranial nerve functioning and respiratory rate and rhythm. Okay, we have to check for cranial nerve functioning. Okay, so total pair cranial nerve we have to assess whether it is functioning or not. Then oxygen needs are also monitored by assessing tissue perfusion. We can check through pulse oximeter. Then ABG analysis, this will helps to check the oxygen saturation in the blood. Then fluid status should be assessed with the help of BP or central venous pressure monitoring. We can assess the fluid status, whether the patient is having sufficient fluid in the body or not. Then monitoring for complications. Okay, complication mainly it including cerebral edema. If bleeding is active bleeding is there, then there is a chance of increased pressure inside the brain and can lead to edema. Another thing is herniation. Okay, so herniation is occurring if any blood clot is remaining there for long time after the injury. It can lead to herniating the brain tissues. Deterioration in condition may be due to expanding intracranial hematoma, progressive brain edema, and herniation of the brain. So these are the possible complications that we have to assess every time, whether they are having any kind of edema or herniation. Then peak swelling occurs 72 hours after injury. So we have to always observe that the peak swelling or edema is occurring after 72 hours of the injury. Okay, so that will shows with elevated ICP. If ICP is or intracranial pressure is increasing, that means there is a increase in or edema. Okay, then monitoring for other complications like systemic infection, if they are having any systemic infection along with head injury, neurosurgical infections, then wound infections, osteomyelitis or meningitis. Then some patients develop focal nerve palsy such as anosmia. Some focal nerve particular loss of sensation will be there, especially smell or a taste. Okay, then eye movement abnormalities. Okay, sometimes they can, you can see that one eye is moving properly and other eye is fixed, so that is also a focal nerve palsy. Then post-traumatic seizure and epilepsy. So after the head injury, if still patient is having increase intracranial pressure, then there is a chance of epilepsy or seizure. So we have to always monitor for the chance of epilepsy and seizure, because if epilepsy or seizure is occurring, it can lead to further injury to the brain. Patient may be left with organic psychosocial deficit and may lack insight into their emotional response. So sometimes they will be in a they will be left with organic psychological deficit. They are having some chance of memory loss or short time memory. Then there is some problems related to their thinking. Okay, cognitive abilities will be reducing. Okay, then acute nursing care including means immediate. Okay, what are the immediate care we have to provide? Maintaining the airway and breathing pattern. Once you have seen a patient with head injury, we have to assess for the airway and breathing pattern. First determine patient's respiratory rate, rhythm and depth, because proper oxygenation is needed for brain metabolism. If oxygen is lack, then it can lead to ischemia and necrosis. Then guard against aspiration and respiratory insufficiency. So patient is in head injury, there's a chance of most probably in head injury patient will be in unconsciousness. So we have to check for whether any aspiration risk is there. Okay, Then head injury patients with airway obstruction require immediate endotracheal intubation. If there is having some airway obstruction, then we have to immediately go for endotracheal intubation, or we have to connect the patient in a mechanical ventilator. Patency of airway is indicated by equal bilateral chest movement, normal air entry on auscultation and oxygen saturation above 95%. So how we can check whether the patient is having proper ventilation? If bilateral chest movement, when you are auscultating or when you are observing the patient, if inspecting the patient during the respiration time, whether they are bilateral chest expansion, both chest is or both side of the chest is expanding properly, or whether they are maintaining a saturation above 95%, that means they are having patency of airway. Then position the unconscious line to facilitate drainage of secretion. Elevate head of the bed 30 to 45 degree to decrease intracranial venous pressure. Okay, so always you have to keep the head injury patient in an elevated head and position so that the ICP will reduce. Okay, then establish effective suctioning procedure. So there is a chance of, in unconscious case, there is a chance of aspiration. We have to do proper suctioning. Then visible mucus bubbling in the ET tube indicate the need for suctioning. So after connecting ET tube, if you are seeing some presence of sputum or mucus inside the ET tube, that means this is the time for doing suctioning. Then monitor ABG to assess adequacy of ventilation. We have to monitor ABG, arterial blood gas analysis, every day to understand the need of ventilation. Then monitor patient on mechanical ventilation, humidified oxygen, endotracheal intubation, then tracheostomy or mechanical ventilator may be required to maintain partial oxygen level at 80 mm of Hg or above. So, in order to maintain the adequate oxygenation, sometimes the patient will need mechanical ventilation, sometimes tracheostomy, or there is a chance of some endotracheal intubation. Monitor for pulmonary complications like acute respiratory distress syndrome and pneumonia. Okay, so these all things will become under acute nursing care. Along with this, maintaining adequate cerebral tissue perfusion. Okay, proper oxygenation should be maintaining. Administer the medication that are ordered to reduce cerebral edema, especially osmotic diuretics and corticosteroids. The example for osmotic diuretic is mannitol and corticosteroid is methylprednisone. So this medication will help to reduce the cerebral edema. Maintain normothermia, elevating the head of the bed at least 30 degrees, keeping the head in neutral position. You should not fix the head in a particular position, in a neutral position. According to the patient comfort, we have to keep the head. So we should not restrict the head. Okay, avoiding extreme hip flexion, and can facilitate venous jugular drainage and decrease cerebral edema. Okay, so you have to avoid the extreme hip flexion. Okay, then early treatment of dysarrhythmia and blood replacement, as indicated, may necessary for maintenance of an adequate cardiac output. Okay, so early treatment should be given for dysarrhythmia if then there is some irregular heart rate or rhythm, and if there is a loss of fluid volume, so that should be replaced by blood transfusion. It should be done. It will help to maintain the adequate cardiac output. Then control of active bleeding by compression when possible, unless a skull fracture is present. Then we have to control increase ICP by elevate head and to 30 degree. Hyperventilate the patient. We have to provide proper oxygenation. Prevent the Valsalva maneuver. Then maintain the patient head and neck in a neutral position. Maintain normothermia. We have to maintain the normal body temperature. Then maintain fluid restriction. Okay. If more, if the intracranial pressure is more increased, then we have to maintain the fluid restriction. Then maintaining fluid and electrolyte balance. Fluid and electrolyte balance is particularly important in patients receiving osmotic diuretics because there's a chance of loss of fluid from the body. Osmotic diuretic will helps to reduce the intracranial pressure by eliminating the fluid from the body. So we have to provide proper fluid and electrolyte balance. Okay, we have to maintain the balance. Okay, then those with the inappropriate ADH hormone secretion and with post-traumatic diabetes insipidus. So in these conditions, we have to maintain the fluid and electrolyte balance. Monitor serum and urine electrolyte levels, osmolality and intake and output to evaluate disorder of sodium regulation and endocrine function. We have to check the intake and output properly so that we can identify whether any increased loss of fluid is there or not. Record daily weight if possible. If it is possible, then we have to record the daily weight. Then providing adequate nutrition, parental nutrition via central line or enteral feedings administered by a nasogastric tube. Either parental route of administration we have to give, or we have to start NG2 feeding. So it will help to improve the nutrition. Start NG feeding as soon as conditions stabilize unless there is discharge of CSF from the nose. So if there is no active bleeding from the nose, then we have to start the NG2 feeding. Then oral tubes may be feeding tubes also may be used. Food intake may resume when swallowing reflex returns and patient can meet caloric requirements orally. So once the patient's swallowing reflex or gag reflex is started, then we can also provide feeding. Okay, give small frequent feedings to lessen the possibility of vomiting and diarrhea. So always you have to provide a small and frequent feeding. It will helps to reduce the chances of possibility of vomiting and diarrhea. Elevate head of the bed and check residual feeding before feedings. Okay, so always you have to elevate the head end while giving the feeding. Then monitoring for seizure development and preventing injury. Protect the client at risk prophylactically by placing padding on side rails, keeping the bed in a low position, giving anticonvulsant medication on time. So we have to take all the necessary precautions while the patient in a bed. We have to place proper padding on side rails, then keep the bed in a low position. These all things we have to check. Then if a seizure does occur, call for help as you are protecting the client's head and turning the client to a lateral position to displace the tongue and to promote an open airway. So if there is a chance of seizure or if some seizure occur, you have to ask for help. You have to call somebody for help so that you can position the patient head, and you can avoid tongue biting and possible complications. Stay with the client, protect the client from harm, and observe the onset, progression, and duration of the seizure. So always one person should be accommodated with the patient. So for checking for the possible changes in their condition, and also we have to assess for any chance or risk of seizures. Suction is necessary and monitor vital signs. Always you have to do the suction to remove the secretion and prevent aspiration pneumonia. And vital signs should be assessed. Notify the physician, give oxygen and prepare for administration of an IV anticonvulsants. Then observe for restlessness, which may be due to hypoxia, fever, pain, or full bladder. You have to check for any restlessness. Restlessness mainly they are showing due to hypoxia, decreased oxygen level, fever, pain, or full bladder. Okay. Then avoid bladder distension. If bladder you have to properly empty the bladder on time. Avoid restraints when possible because straining can increase ICP. So if restraints is not needed, then you should avoid keeping restraints because straining or increasing stress can lead to increased ICP, which will further make brain damage. Avoid using narcotics for restless because they depress respiration, constrict pupils, and alter loss of consciousness. Okay, so try to avoid narcotics. Okay, if the patient is restlessness, you can provide some sedative, but try to avoid narcotics because it can lead to respiratory paralysis and constriction of pupils, and also there is some changes in level of consciousness. Keep environmental stimuli to a minimum. Provide adequate lighting to prevent visual hallucination. Do not disrupt sleep or wake cycles. Okay, you should not disturb them in between the sleep or wake up cycles, and also you have to provide adequate light in the room. Okay, then preventing risk for infection by suctioning a client nasally. If an anterior fossa or basilar fracture or CSF leakage from the ear or nose is present, you have to provide. We should not do suctioning through nasal if there is any chance of CSF leakage from the ear or nose. It can lead to infection. If drainage is present, test it for the presence of glucose. If any drainage is there, then you have to check for the presence of glucose. Always use sterile dressing to absorb the fluid. Change them whenever they become wet to decrease the entry of microorganisms. So, in order to prevent the microorganism, we have to always follow a sterile aseptic technique. If the client is conscious, discourage nose blowing, coughing, and inhibition of sneezing. Okay, so you have to tell them to avoid such kind of activity like nose blowing, coughing, and inhibition of sneezing. It can lead to further injury. Instead, the client to sneeze through open mouth. If they want to sneeze, then tell them to open the mouth and do the sneezing. Administer prescribed antibiotics on time. Report any signs of meningitis. If any chance of brain infection, we have to report immediately. Use an external sheath catheter for incontinence because an indwelling catheter may produce infection. So, external sheath catheter we have to provide, that will helps to prevent the infection than indwelling or Foley's catheterizing. And use strict aseptic technique. Always you have to follow aseptic technique because there is a chance of septicemia or body infection. Maintaining body temperature, monitor temperature every 2 to 4 hours. If temperature rises, administer acetaminophen and cooling blankets to reduce the temperature or to make it to normal. Monitor for infection related to fever. Then maintaining skin integrity, assess all body surfaces and document skin integrity every 8 hours. You have to check for any chances of any pressure ulcer or bed sores or any dryness, that we have to assess and also document. Then head injury patient position is changed every 2 hourly to prevent complication of prolonged bed rest. So always we have to change the position every 2 hourly. Provide skincare every 4 hourly. Then use skin lubricant to prevent irritation due to rubbing against the sheet. Okay, so we have to apply some powder or some dusting applicants. It will helps to prevent the rubbing or friction against the body and bed. Then assist patient to get out of the bed 3 times a day. Okay, so you have to start mobilizing the patient at least 3 times a day. It will helps to improve the circulation. Then maintaining cognitive function, we have to go do develop patient's ability to devise problem solving strategies through cognitive rehabilitation over time is a multidisciplinary approach. So we have to give care to the cognitive approach of the patient about their thinking, their memory and all. So we have to start the rehabilitation programs. Be aware that there are fluctuations in orientation and memory, and that these patients are easily distracted. So, in head injury patients, there is a chance of disorientation and there is some fluctuation in memory. So, that should be distracted. Then, do not push to a level greater than patient's impaired cortical functioning allows, because fatigue, headache, and stress may occur. So, you should not disturb the patient. So, don't ask unnecessary question if that may be making problems or troubling. Okay, so troubling questions and activities should be avoided because it can increase fatigue, headache, and stress. Then preventing sleep pattern disturbance, we have to provide group nursing activities to prevent sleep disturbances. Then decrease environmental noise, dim room lights, provide strategies to increase comfort. Monitoring and managing potential complications. So you have to always monitor for the potential complications like airway altered, breathing pattern, hypoxemia, and pneumonia should be always assessed, and we have to monitor properly. Then assist for intubation and mechanical ventilation. Provide IV fluids, enteral feedings, insulin if needed. Initiate PN as ordered if patient is unable to. Parenteral nutrition, we have to start if the patient is unable to eat. Monitor for systemic or neurological infection. We have to check for any infection. We have to check the cerebral perfusion pressure. We have to provide proper medication at time. ICP maintenance, normal body temperature maintenance, then hyperventilate or mechanical ventilation. So these all things we have to measure and control. Monitor for major post-operative complication like increased ICP, hemorrhage, obstruction to the normal flow of CSF after craniotomy. So these all complications should be monitored. Assess carefully for development of post-traumatic seizure. So most of the patient is suffering from head injury patients are suffering from post-traumatic seizures. So that we have to always assess and we have to carefully handle. Providing psychological support to the patient and family, that is also very important to improve their health. So this is all about the nursing management of head injury patient. It is very important for your exam. Please go through the nursing management and you have to make the notes properly, and if there is any doubt you can ask me. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you.